Well, Mr. President, what we just saw here is pretty shocking. There are always limits to what can be accomplished when the American people choose divided government. But of course, it doesn't mean Washington shouldn't work toward bipartisan solutions that make sense for our country. Trade offers a perfect opportunity to do just that. We on this side believe strongly in lifting up the middle class, and knocking down unfair barriers that discriminate against American workers and American products in the 21st century. On this issue, the President agrees. So we worked in good faith all year long to formulate a package that both parties could support. The top Republican on the Finance Committee, Senator Hatch, engaged in months of good faith negotiations with the top Democrat on the committee, Senator Wyden. They consulted closely with colleagues over in the House, like Chairman Ryan. They consulted closely with President Obama, with Democrats, with Republicans. The issues they had to work through were tough. Difficult concessions had to be made. Many believed an agreement would never emerge. But in the end, a strong bipartisan trade package came together that was able to pass through the committee by an overwhelming margin of 20-6. 20-6. It was a significant win for the people we represent. It was a win for the Americans who look to us to secure economic growth and good jobs for them, not give in to the special interests who apparently would rather see those jobs end up in countries like China. It was a win for the security of our country and for our leadership around the world. The Secretary of Defense, for example, was at lunch with Republicans today talking about the importance to our repositioning to the Pacific from a defense and foreign policy point of view to get TPP. He was accompanied by seven, not at our lunch, but seven former defense secretaries of both parties said this just last week: the stakes are clear and America's prestige, influence, and leadership are on the line. So the rationale for voting yes today, a vote that would simply have allowed the Senate to debate the issue, was overwhelming. It was supported by the facts, and yet voices in the President's party who rail against the future won out today. I don't routinely quote President Obama, but today is no ordinary day. So when the President said the hard left is just making stuff up, when the President said their increasingly bizarre arguments didn't, quote, stand the test of fact and scrutiny, end quote, it was hard to argue with him. You don't make change through slogans, the President reminded his adversaries on this issue. You don't make change through ignoring realities. And I think that's something worth reflecting on. Now, this doesn't have to be the end of the story. Trade has traditionally been a bipartisan issue that cut across the partisan divide. And I suspect we have colleagues on the other side who aren't that comfortable filibustering economic benefits for their constituents, or a president who leads their party. What we've just witnessed here is the Democratic Senate shut down the opportunity to debate the top economic priority of the Democratic President of the United States. I suspect some may be parking their vote rather than actually buying the outlandish rhetoric we've heard from the left. Certainly that's my hope. But to get the best outcome for the country, we have to be realistic. For instance, the idea that any senator can make a guarantee that a particular bill will be enacted into law is simply impossible. I assure you that we would have had a different outcome on today's cloture motion if senators actually wielded the power to force things through by sheer will alone. Obviously, we don't. What we can guarantee is that senators receive a fair shake once we proceed to the debate our country deserves on a 21st century American trade agenda. We'll have an open and fair amendment process. How many times have I said that this year? That's what we intend to do when we get on TPA. And for my part, I can restate my commitment to processing TPA and TAA and other policies Chairman Hatch and Senator Wyden can agree to. The Senate has historically been a place where our country debates and considers big issues. This is an issue worthy of our consideration, and yet today we have voted not to even consider it. It doesn't mean we can't predetermine outcomes. It doesn't mean we can even guarantee the successful passage of legislation once we proceed to debate it. I can't make those kind of guarantees that the other side was saying is a precondition to even considering the president's #1 domestic priority. But blocking the Senate from even having a debate of such an important issue is not the answer. Senators who do so are choosing to stand with special interests and against the American jobs, knocking down more unfair trade barriers will obviously support. So I sure hope that some of our colleagues across the aisle will heed the words of President Obama and rethink their choice. I hope they'll vote with us to open debate on this issue. And let me reiterate, we'll continue to engage with both sides. We will continue to engage with both sides. We will have an open amendment process. We'll continue to cooperate in the same spirit that got us through so many impossible hurdles already in getting this bill to the floor. This was no small accomplishment to get it as far as it has come, given the various points of view on the Finance Committee, and Chairman Hatch and Senator Wyden deserve a lot of credit for that. But they didn't go through all of that to stall out here before we have a chance to produce something important for the American people. So I hope that folks on the other side who are preventing this debate will seriously consider the implications of this. Other countries are taking a look at us. They're wondering whether we can deliver. We hear TPP is close to being finalized. And here's the headline they see, that every single one, with one exception, I believe, of the president's own party in the Senate, prevented the mechanism for having trade considered, prevented it from even coming to the Senate floor. That's not the kind of headline that we want to send around the world, that America can't be depended upon, that America can't deliver trade agreements. To our allies in the Pacific who are apprehensive about the Chinese and who thought this was not only good for their commerce, but good for their security, what kind of message does that send? So I move to reconsider. Hopefully there'll be an opportunity for people to think this over, and that we'll be able to come together and go forward on a bipartisan basis to achieve an important accomplishment for the American people.
Mr. President.